When I was about 17, I think it was. I actually don't even know. I think I was 17. I was in college, like everyone is at 17, I guess, and I was a Christian. Now, my background was what you call a Seventh Day Adventist. There are many, there are many Christian denominations, to be honest. You have Catholics and whatnot. But what made the Seventh Day Adventist special, I guess, or different, was that they tried to adhere to the rules of Moses, so they say. So they observe the Sabbath on Saturday, they don't go to church on Sunday. And funnily enough, they reject a lot of what you would call innovations in Christianity, minus the big innovation, which is Trinity. But they reject innovations, so things like Christmas and whatnot, they don't celebrate because they don't believe this was from the original teachers of Jesus, which is true. Anyway, so I was in my math class once, and on that particular day, the teacher was absent. So I was just in my classroom doing homework, I guess, and then one brother just came to me and said, "What do you know about Islam?" Now, this particular brother, I didn't know him. I mean, he was in my class, but I didn't know him. And he just came to me with a random question about what do I know about Islam. Now, I didn't know much about Islam. Well, I didn't know anything about Islam at the time. And I guess in my head, as far as I knew, Muslims were no different from any infidel, idolater. That's how I saw it in the days. So when he started telling me about Islam and told me that Muslims believe in Jesus and Moses, I was a bit taken back because I was confused actually. I was scratching my head thinking, wait, these guys, they worship monkeys and cows, and yet they believe in Jesus and Moses? Obviously, in my head, everyone worships monkeys and cows and animals and whatnot. And that's important to know for anyone who wants to give da'wah or invite Christians to Islam, is that generally speaking, a Christian has zero knowledge about Islam, unless they've actually actively looked. And it's not uncommon for Christians to believe that only they and Jews are monotheistic. It's not uncommon. So when given da'wah, have patience with them. So he gave me knowledge about Islam, told me that they believe in the prophets, and I was a bit taken back, like I said. Anyway, the conversation went on a bit, and we debated, and I didn't really have anything to say, really, because he knew a lot about me in terms of Christianity, and I actually knew nothing about him, i.e. a Muslim. So after that, I went on research. I went to look at what is this Islam, what are they claiming, and my first source literally was, at the time, World Book. It was like an encyclopedia I had at home. And I guess today, that's like, in today's standards, that's like Googling. So I went to my encyclopedia, opened up Islam, read about that, learned about words like Sunnah and Quran, read about those things. And the more and more I learnt, the more and more I was convinced that this guy might actually be on something, might actually be telling the truth. So I kept on reading and I kept on researching. And it got to a point where, I don't know how, I was actually inviting others to Islam. I was saying, yeah, there's a religion, which is true, that Allah gave them a book called the Quran and then the Sunnah. I know, it sounds odd, inviting others to Islam when you yourself are not even Muslim yet. It was an odd one. But I was convinced enough to invite others to it, but for some reason I delayed. Anyway, so what was a turning point for me though? Well, I went through the usual phases, looking at the contradictions in the Bible, seeing where the Bible contradicted itself, the inconsistencies with regards to belief and doctrine. I went through the usual phases. But there was one particular question I had to myself was, well, if Islam is true, then in that case there must be some level of consistency. In my head I thought, well, if they believe in all the prophets, and all the prophets taught the same thing, then in the Bible from the Old Testament, or the first part of the Bible, should be the same as the last part of the Bible, and should be the same as the Quran. So I began to read the Bible. So I read Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Those are books of the Bible. And I thought to myself, if the Old Testament has one God and the New Testament has three, and the Quran has one, then I'll be Muslim, because obviously something has changed along the way. But if there's Trinity in the Old Testament, I'll stay as I am. That was the idea. So as I was reading the Bible, time was going on, man. I thought to myself, you know what, I might be reading, and then one day I die, and I'm still thinking and looking at it. So what I did was, I thought, let me just look in the Quran just to see what it's saying, just to get. I was impatient, really, and I came across an ayah of the Quran. Actually, it's one of the first ayahs of the Quran I came across, and it literally floored me. It said, "O people of the book, do not go into extremes in your religion and say about me that which is not true, for I am the only God, Allah." Now, what got me about the ayah was that after reading so much of the Bible, and everything was in the third person, reading a text which was literally the speech of Allah, as in saying, don't say this about me because I am, that mannerism was very different for me. It was very direct, it was very powerful, really. And on top of that, I felt like it was talking directly to me, because it actually answered the question I was asking. Is there such a thing as Trinity? Does this thing about three gods in one and one in three, and does that even make sense? And at that particular point, I could say that Iman entered my heart. And I could say that then, at that moment, at the ayah, I was convinced. Now, what does that mean? It means, what I've learned from it is that when you're giving da'wah to a Christian or somebody else, it's all good talking about the rules and regulations and how the Sharia is a perfect system and how the Quran was preserved and all the other things. It's all good, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the core of everyone's da'wah has to be Tawheed. It has to be the oneness of Allah. If you don't have Tawheed in your da'wah, then your da'wah is empty. I don't mean empty. I mean in terms of Iman. We are Muslims and we believe in the Sharia, not because it's a perfect system that agrees with me and my nafs, but because it actually came from the Creator. So therefore, the question we should be asking is, has the Sharia come from the Creator? Anyway, I thought I'd share this with you and help you invite others to Islam. Make sure that whatever you discuss, the beginning of it, the middle of it, and the end of it has to be Allah. You have to build and grow in their hearts love of Allah, fear of the hereafter and of punishment, and they have to understand that this religion actually came from Him, and that can only happen if you teach them about Allah. Who is Allah? What has He done for us? Who is our Creator? These questions is what builds and grows Iman in the heart. Not whether hijab is great or whether niqab is useful, but whether or not this Sharia came from the Creator of the heavens and the earth. And that's the same approach I always have now when I speak to Christians. They often talk about these affairs of Islamic law, and I always say to them, put this question aside for a minute, whatever you're asking about this law and that law, and ask yourself a question. If this law came from the Creator, would you accept it? If you had 100% surety that this law, that this system, that this whole religion came from the Creator, would you have any doubt to follow it? If the answer is no, of course they'll follow it. Then the question next should be, okay, so let's talk about Him then. We hope you've benefited from this little reminder. Like button, subscribe, the bell, the usual stuff. Assalamu alaikum.